The Cry Beneath the Noise. From the book, The Meaning of Being Human, Navigating Pain, Purpose, and Presence, a fourfold voice, synthesis of the journey from suffering to wholeness. Beneath the noise of the world, there is a cry, the ancient hum of the soul remembering itself. It trembles beneath our laughter and ambition, beneath the cities we built to forget our ache. Yet pain, the teacher we feared most, has always been the doorway. Through its wound, we discover not punishment, but passage, a sacred return to what was never lost. We wear identities like masks, mistaking them for truth, until the mirror cracks and we glimpse what lies beyond the name. We chase purpose as though it hides ahead, yet find it only in stillness. We seek presence as refuge, not knowing it was the ground of our being all along. To be human is not to rise above suffering, but to make it luminous. It is to let the infinite feel through form, to turn agony into awareness and silence into revelation. Love becomes our teacher, conflict our mirror, wholeness our remembering. The world's noise is the sound of the infinite breaking open in us. And beneath it all, the cry softens, becomes song, becomes stillness. Let us begin, not to seek answers, but to remember what we already are. Pain, the teacher we feared most, from the book The Meaning of Being Human, Navigating Pain, Purpose, and Presence, a fourfold voice, synthesis of the journey from suffering to wholeness. Opening pain is the initiation we spend our lives avoiding, yet it is the first and last teacher every soul will meet. It waits in the margins of our laughter, in the echoes of our joy, whispering, "I am not your enemy. I am your return." To awaken is to stop running from pain long enough to hear what it has been trying to say. Pain is not cruelty. It is communication, the body's poetry, the psyche's translation of imbalance, the soul's insistence that something once whole has been forgotten. Every culture has tried to silence it, to explain it, to numb it. Yet every culture has also been shaped by it. Pain is the secret architect of consciousness. It chisels compassion into the hardened surfaces of the ego. It reminds the infinite, trapped in flesh, of the fragility that makes love possible. We have feared it because we mistook it for punishment. We have worshipped pleasure because we thought it was proof of blessing. But the infinite hides in both. Pleasure teaches expansion, pain teaches depth. Together they reveal the two lungs of existence. Inhale and exhale, joy and sorrow, creation and return. History, the wound as civilization's mirror. From the beginning of story, pain has been humanity's initiation ritual. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the first recorded epic, grief awakens a king from arrogance into wisdom. The death of his friend Enkidu becomes the doorway through which he finally perceives mortality, and therefore meaning. In the book of Job, anguish becomes dialogue. Job's suffering is not punishment, but participation in divine mystery. He does not receive explanation, he receives encounter. The infinite answers not with comfort, but with cosmos. The storm, the thunder, the vastness that dissolves his complaint into awe. Ancient Egypt understood pain as fragmentation necessary for renewal. Osiris is torn to pieces so that resurrection may occur. In Greece, the myth of Prometheus, punished for bringing fire to humanity, mirrors the paradox of knowledge. Light always carries the price of suffering. Every civilization has translated pain into ritual. Indigenous tribes mark passage into adulthood through trials of endurance, not as cruelty, but as communion with spirit. The body must remember its own strength, the soul its belonging to the greater whole. Then came the moralization of pain. In medieval Europe, suffering became sin's evidence. The church claimed authority over the meaning of agony, declaring that redemption was attainable only through obedience and guilt. The crucifix became both symbol of salvation and weapon of control. The Enlightenment sought to intellectualize pain. Science replaced theology, yet still avoided its mystery. The Cartesian split, I think, therefore I am, severed feeling from knowing. The body became machine, pain became malfunction. Yet, as Yuval Noah Harari reminds in Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, every empire and economy has been built upon the management of human pain, whether through labor, belief, or illusion. In the 20th century, pain began to speak in new tongues. Wars exposed the fragility of reason. Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, found that even in concentration camps, those who survived were those who discovered meaning within suffering itself. The wound became the womb of purpose, Pain is the pulse of history. Each era represses it in new ways, only to rediscover it as revelation. Humanity evolves not by escaping suffering, but by remembering how to suffer consciously. Science, the biology of pain and the intelligence of the nervous system. Pain in its purest form is awareness embodied. It is the body's sentient alarm, a vibration of survival written into every cell. But beyond alarm, it is language, the dialogue between neuron and consciousness, between matter and meaning. Within the brain, pain travels through the thalamus, insula, anterior cingulate cortex, a triad of sensation, emotion, and interpretation. It is never only physical, it is perception sculpted by memory and attention. Bessel van der Kolk, in The Body Keeps the Score, unveils this truth. Trauma is not the event, but the body's frozen dialogue with it. Pain left unspoken becomes time trapped in tissue. Neuroscience now echoes what mystics have always whispered. Awareness changes matter. Through neuroplasticity, the brain rewires itself with every act of conscious attention. Norman Doidge in The Brain That Changes Itself shows how thought itself can transform physical architecture. Pain faced with presence becomes transmuted. Neurons that once encoded threat begin to encode learning, resilience, expansion. Robert Sapolsky in Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers exposes how chronic stress, the inability to return to safety, turns survival into suffering. The nervous system, meant to oscillate between alert and rest, becomes trapped in perpetual vigilance. Healing, then, is the restoration of rhythm, the remembering of oscillation. Even at the quantum level, pain participates in creation. Compression gives birth to fusion. The universe itself was born from unimaginable density. Carlo Rovelli in Reality Is Not What It Seems reminds us that space is not emptiness, but interaction, fields vibrating with possibility. In this sense, pain is not opposition to life, but evidence of it. Energy must fluctuate to manifest form. Without tension, there is no becoming. The human body, in all its fragility, mirrors cosmic principle. Pain is how the infinite maintains conversation with matter. It is feedback from form to field, ensuring that awareness does not stagnate. It is life's way of saying, you are still awake. Philosophy. Meaning born from the abyss. Where science measures pain, philosophy listens to its silence. Friedrich Nietzsche, in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, taught that one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. Pain, to Nietzsche, is creative potential, the chaos that gives rise to higher order. Albert Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, envisioned man pushing the stone of absurdity uphill, smiling still. His rebellion was acceptance, not surrender, but participation in the meaningless as meaning itself. To live is to choose life again, even in futility. Viktor Frankl built on this. Suffering ceases to be suffering when it gains meaning. The philosophical turn of the 20th century was inward, from metaphysics to meaning-making. Pain revealed that consciousness is not passive, it is interpretive. Reality is shaped not only by what happens, but by the story we tell of it. Existentialism, from Jean-Paul Sartre to Simone de Beauvoir, declared freedom as the human burden, the terrifying gift to assign meaning where none is given. Pain, then, becomes responsibility, the proof that we are co-authors of experience. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, already understood this. It is not things that disturb us, Epictetus wrote, but our opinions about things. They knew that perception could turn agony into enlightenment. Philosophy finally met the soul in pain. It stopped asking why and began asking who. Who is the one that suffers? Who is the one that observes suffering? What if pain's true purpose is to collapse the distance between the two? To remind us that observer and observed are one. Spirit, the alchemy of the dark night. When the mind collapses and the heart cracks, spirit begins its work. St. John of the Cross, in The Dark Night of the Soul, wrote that when light withdraws, it is not absence but preparation. The soul must pass through shadow to become transparent enough for divinity. Pain burns the false until only the essence remains. Thich Nhat Hanh, in No Mud, No Lotus, taught that suffering and joy are not opposites but companions. The lotus of awakening grows only from the mud of human struggle. Without the mud, there is no fragrance. Mystics across traditions agree, pain is purification. The Sufi poet Rumi sang, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Buddhist teachers describe dukkha, suffering, as the friction of impermanence against attachment. Christian mystics speak of crucifixion as consciousness stretched wide enough to include all. In the Upanishads, pain is Maya's veil tearing. In the Tao Te Ching, it is the return to the root. In modern mysticism, Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now teaches that all pain is resistance to what is. When we stop fighting the moment, suffering dissolves into sensation, sensation into stillness, stillness into presence. To the awakened, pain is not the opposite of peace. It is peace misunderstood. It is the infinite touching itself through contrast, creating depth where only surface was. The dark night is never darkness. It is the moment before dawn when the eyes of the soul adjust to eternity's light. Conclusion: the wound as doorway to wholeness pain, when seen through the fourfold lens, ceases to be monster and becomes mirror. History shows it as civilization's teacher. Science reveals it as intelligence within the body. Philosophy interprets it as the birthplace of meaning. Spirit unveils it as the furnace of awakening. Together they sing one truth. Pain is the infinite remembering its depth through the finite. It is not here to destroy us, but to refine us, to return us to presence. When you sit with your pain, you are sitting with God in disguise. When you breathe into your ache, you are breathing with the universe itself. When you surrender, you do not collapse, you expand. Because every wound, once witnessed, becomes wisdom. Every scar, once loved, becomes scripture. You are not being punished, you are being invited. The ache is the infinite knocking from within. Hashtag awakening questions. 1. What truth is your pain asking you to remember? 2. If the wound is a doorway, what waits on the other side? 3. How would you live if every ache were sacred communication? 4. Can you allow pain to be your initiation rather than your identity? Final 4 lines. The wound is the altar, not the enemy. Through agony, awareness is born. Through surrender, the infinite sees itself. And in your pain, the universe remembers its heart.